On the outskirts of a sprawling city, where the neon lights struggled to pierce the dark winter gloom, the bitter wind howled down deserted streets like a lost soul wandering in despair. In the midst of this urban wilderness, amid a labyrinth of narrow alleys and crumbling facades, there existed a quiet battle for survival. Here, the city's biting chill seemed to conspire with the loneliness that draped itself over every abandoned building and snow-covered sidewalk. Among the forgotten inhabitants of this cold urban sprawl was Thomas, a 58-year-old war veteran, whose life had been a series of scars both seen and unseen. Once a proud soldier with a name that evoked honor and bravery, he now moved like a ghost through the frigid night. His life had been shattered by the ravages of war, leaving him with deep physical wounds and emotional fissures that time had failed to heal. For years, he had roamed these streets without a home, clutching a threadbare blanket around his shoulders, a cracked cup that had seen better days, and a heart burdened by loneliness and regret. The bitter wind cut through the worn fabric of his jacket as Thomas trudged through the snow, his footsteps muffled by layers of ice. Each gust of wind was a reminder of his isolation, a cold, relentless force that seemed to echo the memories of battles fought far away. The streets were silent, save for the rhythmic crunch of his boots on the frozen pavement, the soft whistle of wind weaving through darkened alleys, and the occasional distant rumble of a passing car. Every step was a testament to his resilience, every breath a silent prayer for warmth in a world that had long since forgotten him. It was in one such desolate alley, a narrow corridor between graffiti-stained walls and overflowing dumpsters, that fate intervened. Amid the deepening drifts of snow and the bitter cold, Thomas noticed a movement. His tired eyes caught sight of something small and shivering near a heap of discarded boxes. Slowly he approached, his curiosity mingled with the cautious hope that had become his only companion. There, half buried in the snow and trembling with every gust of icy wind, lay an injured stray dog. The creature's skeletal frame was etched with signs of suffering, ribs that pressed against its thin coat, eyes that shimmered with a mixture of pain and desperate longing, and a wounded leg that oozed a slow, steady stream of blood. The dog's fur was matted and clung to its skin like a tattered shroud, and despite its obvious plight, there was an undeniable spark of life in its eyes, a glimmer that suggested it was still willing to fight against the odds. For a moment, time seemed to slow as Thomas knelt beside the creature. The veteran's weathered hands trembled slightly as he reached out, not in hostility, but in a gesture of cautious compassion. In that quiet moment, the wounded animal stirred, and its eyes met Thomas's, a gaze that carried memories of another time, another life. The dog's soulful look was reminiscent of a loyal companion Thomas had once known during his military service in Afghanistan. That faithful friend had saved his life on a blistering battlefield, and now, in the midst of urban desolation, the injured dog seemed to mirror that past, a living echo of love and loyalty that Thomas had long believed lost, despite the gnawing hunger in his own belly and the numb chill that crept beneath his skin. Thomas knew that he could not abandon this fragile creature. The dog, as if sensing his intent, whimpered softly, a sound that tugged at the depths of his weary heart. With a quiet resolve born from years of hardship and survival, Thomas carefully unpacked the small portion of food he had managed to scavenge. A modest bowl of soup, its warmth a rare luxury in these unforgiving months. In the pale glow of a flickering street lamp, Thomas sat on a battered crate and poured the soup into a battered tin bowl. The aroma, rich with spices and the promise of nourishment, mingled with the crisp air. He set the bowl before the dog, whose eyes now shone with a fragile hope. With each cautious sip, the dog's trembling subsided slightly. As it drank, Thomas recalled the long-forgotten image of his military companion, a creature whose unwavering loyalty had been a beacon of hope amid the chaos of war. The resemblance was more than skin-deep. It was a spiritual connection that rekindled a part of him he had resigned to the past. For a long time, they sat together in silence, the veteran and the wounded dog sharing not only the humble meal, but Also, a moment of unspoken understanding. In that fleeting hour, the boundaries between man and animal blurred, replaced by a shared struggle and a mutual desire for survival. The act of sharing his meager meal was, for Thomas, an act of redemption, a way to reclaim a sense of purpose and compassion that had been buried beneath years of neglect and sorrow. As the night wore on, the bitter cold deepened its grip on the city, transforming the alley into a frozen purgatory. Thomas wrapped his threadbare blanket around both himself and the injured dog, drawing them together for warmth. The two huddled. In a small nook beside a crumbling brick wall, their mutual presence a fragile shield against the overwhelming isolation of winter. The veteran's eyes, often filled with a haunted emptiness, softened as he watched the dog settle into a tentative slumber. In the quiet hours of that long, unforgiving night, Thomas's mind wandered back to memories of camaraderie and sacrifice. He recalled the sunlit days of military service, moments of brotherhood amid the chaos of combat, where every shared hardship had been tempered by the knowledge that one had a comrade to depend on. Now, in the stark reality of urban winter, that spirit of togetherness reawakened. The dog, with its weak body and tender vulnerability, had become more than a mere stray. It was a symbol of second chances, a living reminder that even in the depths of despair, the possibility of redemption was never truly extinguished. Throughout the night, as the wind howled and the snow fell in relentless sheets, Thomas spoke softly to the dog. His words, carried away by the wind, were filled with promises of protection, care, and a future where both might find solace from their suffering. "I know what it's like to be abandoned," he murmured, his voice a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "But we'll find our way out of this darkness together." In those whispered confessions, the veteran's heart began to mend, brick by fragile brick, as he allowed the warmth of compassion to seep into his hardened soul. The next few days unfolded in a slow, painful rhythm of survival. The city, still cloaked in the aftermath of a heavy snowstorm, was a desolate expanse where only the most tenacious souls dared to wander. Thomas and the dog became inseparable companions on this lonely journey, a pair bound by mutual need and the silent promise of loyalty. Each day, Thomas would rise with the weak winter sun, his body stiff and sore from nights spent shivering on cold concrete. With the dog by his side, he navigated the labyrinthine streets in search of scraps of food and a temporary haven from the relentless chill. The dog, despite its injury, moved with a determined gait, its eyes ever watchful and alert. It seemed to instinctively understand that survival was a shared battle, a war fought not with weapons, but with the sheer force of will and the capacity to love beyond reason. There were moments when the cruelty of the world seemed insurmountable. On one particularly harsh afternoon, as biting winds whipped through the deserted streets and the sky was a dreary expanse of grey, Thomas's stomach growled with an insatiable hunger. He found himself rummaging through overflowing trash bins, behind an old diner, desperate to find even the smallest morsel to ease his pangs. In the midst of this struggle, the dog remained by his side, its presence a quiet anchor in a sea of despair. As Thomas shared what little he found, a crust of stale bread and a smattering of discarded leftovers with the dog, he noticed something remarkable. The dog's eyes, filled with an unspoken gratitude, flickered with the same fierce determination that had once defined his military companion. It was as if, in that moment, the dog was saying, "We'll make it through this. We have each other." And in that silent exchange, Thomas felt an ember of hope ignite within him, a belief that perhaps his life was not yet destined to fade into the shadows of forgotten war and endless winter. Just as hope began to glimmer in the bleak landscape of Thomas's existence, fate decided to test the bond that had grown between man and dog. One bitterly cold evening, as the sun sank behind a veil of dark clouds and the city's streets lay deserted under a heavy blanket of snow, Thomas and the dog found themselves confronted by danger. A group of thugs, emboldened by the anonymity of the night and the perceived vulnerability of those living on the fringes of society, emerged from the shadows. Their faces were hardened by years of bitterness, and their eyes glinted with predatory intent. They saw in Thomas and his faithful companion an opportunity, a chance to relieve them of whatever little they possessed. As the thugs encircled the pair, their voices grew loud, filled with jeers and crude insults. Thomas, though weakened by hunger and exhaustion, stood his ground, his tired eyes reflecting the pain of a lifetime. But before the situation could escalate into violence, the dogs sprang into action. With a burst of ferocity that belied its weakened state, the injured stray positioned itself between Thomas and the advancing assailants. The dog's low, menacing growl reverberated through the cold air as it lunged at the nearest thug. In that moment, memories of military valor seemed to merge with the animal's instinctive loyalty. The thugs, caught off guard by the unexpected ferocity of the small creature, faltered. In the ensuing chaos, Thomas found a renewed surge of strength and inner fire ignited by the dog's courageous act. Though the confrontation was brief, it was enough to send the assailants fleeing into the night, their curses trailing behind them, like echoes in the dark. In the silence that followed, Thomas knelt down and cradled the dog in his arms, whispering words of gratitude and relief. The moment was both triumphant and bittersweet, a poignant reminder that even in the midst of dire circumstances, love and loyalty could manifest in the most extraordinary of ways. In the days that followed the incident with the thugs, word of the veteran's unlikely guardian began to spread through the community. Neighbors who had once passed Thomas by without a second glance now spoke in hushed, admiring tones of the brave soul who had faced down cruelty with nothing but the strength of a wounded dog's heart. It wasn't long before a kind-hearted local, moved by the story of their struggle, decided to reach out. Marianne, a warm and compassionate woman in her early 50s, had long dedicated herself to helping those cast aside by life's harshest circumstances. Working at a modest community center that provided meals and shelter for the homeless, she was known for her unwavering kindness and gentle smile. One snowy morning, as Marianne made her routine rounds in the city's most troubled neighborhoods, she caught sight of Thomas and the dog huddled together on a battered bench beneath a flickering street lamp. Her heart went out to them. In Thomas's tired, haunted eyes, she saw the lingering scars of a life defined by war and neglect. And in the dog's loyal gaze, she saw the spirit of a warrior who had fought against insurmountable odds. Marianne approached slowly, her steps measured and soft, as if not to startle the pair. "Hello there," she said softly, extending a hand in a gesture of welcome rather than charity. "I'd like to help." In that moment, the trio began to forge a new path together. Marianne's gentle persistence and genuine care slowly coaxed Thomas out of his shell of solitude. She arranged for him to receive a warm meal and a hot shower at the community center, and she took special care to tend to the dog's wounded leg. With every passing day, Thomas's hardened exterior began to soften as the simple acts of kindness reminded him of a world where hope could still be found. Under Marianne's guidance, Thomas was offered a modest job at a small family-run diner, a place where the aroma of fresh coffee and sizzling meals replaced the bitter taste of despair. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Every morning, as he made his way to the diner with the injured dog by his side, Thomas felt a small but significant weight lift from his shoulders. The May dog, too, seemed to have found a renewed purpose in guarding and accompanying his new friend. The diner became a haven, a small island of warmth amid the icy despair of the city. Thomas, with his weathered face and quiet dignity, soon became a fixture in the community, a living testament to resilience and second chances. Customers, drawn by his unspoken story and the gentle presence of his loyal companion, would often share a kind word or a simple smile. In return, Thomas shared stories of days long past, of battles fought and comrades lost, and of a deep-seated hope that had never truly been extinguished. In the evenings, as the diner's neon sign flickered to life against the backdrop of the starry winter sky, Thomas and the dog would walk home together. Their path, once defined by endless nights in cold alleys, now led to a modest shelter Marianne had arranged for them, a small apartment above a community center where warmth and compassion replaced the bitter cold of the streets. There, in the quiet moments before sleep, Thomas would look into the eyes of the dog, a creature that had once been a symbol of lost loyalty, but was now a beacon of hope, and silently vow that he would do everything in his power to repay the gift of companionship that had been so freely given. Even as life began to settle into a more predictable rhythm, challenges still lurked around every corner. One particularly harsh winter evening, as a blizzard raged outside and the city was reduced to a white, swirling mass of snow and ice, Thomas found himself once again facing the darkness of his past. The diner had closed early due to the storm, and the streets were eerily deserted. Alone with his thoughts and the comforting presence of his loyal dog, Thomas wrestled with memories of a war that had stolen so much from him. Friendships, dreams, and the unyielding belief in a better tomorrow. That night, as the wind howled like a chorus of lost souls, Thomas sat by a small crackling heater in his modest shelter, the dog curled at his feet. In the flickering light, he recounted the stories of his fallen comrades, of battles that had left scars deeper than any visible wound. Yet, amid the sorrow, he recognized the subtle, persistent glow of hope, a spark that Marianne's kindness had ignited, a spark nurtured every day by the unwavering loyalty of the dog at his side. The next morning, when the storm finally subsided, Thomas ventured out into the glistening cityscape with renewed determination. It was on this day that fate would again reveal its benevolence. As he made his way through the newly cleared streets, he was confronted by a situation that demanded every ounce of courage he could muster. A small group of local troublemakers, emboldened by the winter's chaos, attempted to exploit a stray family who had gathered near a temporary shelter. Without hesitation, the dog sprang into action once more. With a ferocity that belied its injury, it positioned itself between Thomas and the aggressors, barking and growling until the would-be attackers, intimidated by the unexpected display of loyalty and protection, retreated into the shadows. The incident did not go unnoticed. Neighbors, who had long admired Thomas's quiet strength and the dog's heroic spirit, began to speak of them in reverent tones. In local cafes and community centers, the story of the homeless veteran and his valiant companion spread like wildfire, a tale of survival, redemption, and the transformative power of love. It was a story that resonated deeply with a community that too had known hardship and loss, and it served as a gentle reminder that even in the harshest conditions, compassion could bloom. As the seasons slowly began to change, the once bleak urban landscape transformed under the tender care of those who had been touched by Thomas and his loyal dog. Marianne's community center flourished, providing not only shelter and sustenance, but also a sense of belonging for those who had been cast aside. Thomas, now a regular at the center, found himself sharing his journey with others, his narrative of struggle and survival becoming a source of inspiration for those seeking a second chance. The dog, whose injuries had long been tended to by caring hands, grew stronger with each passing day. Its once trembling gait became steadier, and its eyes shone with a renewed light, a silent testimony to the power of resilience and the unbreakable bond between a man and his best friend. Together, they became symbols of hope for the entire neighborhood. Their story, celebrated in community gatherings and memorialized in a mural on the side of the center, a depiction of a weathered veteran cradling his faithful dog against a backdrop of snowy streets and hopeful dawns. Thomas, for his part, began to allow the possibility of love and healing into his life. He forged friendships with those who had once been strangers, his quiet demeanor softening as he realized that the scars of the past could be transformed into the strength needed to face the future. With Marianne's gentle encouragement, he even started to attend group sessions where others shared their stories of loss and redemption, finding solace in the shared humanity that bound them all together. In time, as the harsh winter slowly receded into the gentle embrace of spring, life for Thomas and his loyal dog took on an entirely new dimension. The diner where Thomas worked began to thrive, its warm, inviting atmosphere drawing in customers not just for its hearty meals, but for the quiet dignity of the man behind the counter and the steadfast presence of the dog at his side. Every day, as Thomas served customers with a soft smile and quiet words of encouragement, the memory of his past battles seemed to fade, replaced by the vibrant hope of a life rebuilt from the fragments of despair. One sunny afternoon, as the first blooms of spring began to push their way through the last remnants of snow, Marianne approached Thomas with a proposal that would forever alter the course of his life. "Thomas," she said gently, her eyes filled with the kindness that had become her trademark, "I'd like you to consider a more permanent home here. We have a small apartment available above the community center, and I know you deserve a place where you can feel safe and cared for." For a moment, Thomas hesitated, his mind swirling with memories of loss and the uncertainty of trust. But as he looked into the eyes of his loyal companion, whose gaze was steady and full of unspoken understanding, he felt a stirring of hope that he had not felt in years. With a soft nod and a quiet, resolute yes, he accepted Marianne's offer, a decision that would mark the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Over the following months, the small apartment became a sanctuary. Thomas slowly rebuilt his life, his days filled with the warmth of human connection, steady work at the diner, and the unwavering companionship of his rescued friend. The dog, whose once fragile body had become a symbol of survival, now roamed the apartment with a confident, almost regal air, ever watchful of Thomas's side. Together, they forged a quiet, unspoken promise, a vow that no matter what trials lay ahead, they would face them together. The city, once a cold and indifferent expanse, began to reveal pockets of beauty and community. Local residents, moved by the story of the veteran and his heroic companion, organized small events to honor those who had overcome adversity. A yearly celebration was established in honor of resilience and compassion, where stories like Thomas's were shared as reminders that hope could flourish even in the most inhospitable places. Years passed, and the once desolate streets transformed with the gentle rhythm of change. The city, once cloaked in the perpetual grey of winter, now burst with the colors of renewal. Vibrant murals adorned brick walls, community gardens bloomed in reclaimed lots, and the hum of life was felt in every corner. Thomas, now a familiar and respected figure in the neighborhood, continued to work at the diner, his presence a steady reminder of the transformative power of kindness and perseverance. On one particularly bright spring day, as sunlight danced on freshly washed windows and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, Thomas and his faithful dog strolled through a bustling community festival held at Marianne's Center. Children played in the park, their laughter mingling with the soft strains of acoustic music, and neighbors exchanged warm greetings. The mural that once told the tale of a lonely veteran and his heroic dog had become a celebrated landmark, a vibrant tribute to the journey from despair to hope. In the midst of the celebration, Thomas paused by the mural, his eyes reflecting a lifetime of hardship now softened by the gentle hues of memory and gratitude. The dog, ever alert, rested its head on his leg, a silent guardian and a friend who had helped him reclaim his dignity. With a deep, contented sigh, Thomas looked up at the sky, where the once relentless storm had given way to a canvas of endless blue. In that moment, he knew that his journey was far from over, but it had taken a turn toward healing, friendship, and belonging. The story of Thomas and his loyal dog had become more than just a tale of survival. It was a testament to the enduring power of love, loyalty, and second chances. What had begun as a desperate struggle in the icy shadows of a cruel city had blossomed into a vibrant future built on the foundation of shared hardships and the warmth of human compassion. The scars of war and the bitter memories of loneliness were now joined by the gentle imprints of kindness, each one a reminder that even the coldest winter could eventually give way to the promise of spring. In the gentle embrace of that hopeful afternoon, as the community celebrated its resilience and unity, Thomas and his dog walked forward together, two souls, forever intertwined by fate, bound by a love that had conquered despair and carrying Within them, the quiet certainty that, no matter how long the night, a new day would always come. Long after the festival ended and the laughter of the day faded into the calm of twilight, the legacy of Thomas and his courageous companion continued to shine. Their story, told and retold by those who had once been strangers, served as a beacon for anyone struggling in the cold margins of life. It reminded the world that even the most broken hearts could be mended, that every soul deserved a chance to find warmth and belonging, and that sometimes salvation arrived on 4 paws and a determined heart. Thomas's journey from a homeless war veteran to a respected member of the community was not just a personal triumph, but a living parable for all who believed in the power of redemption. His scars, both visible and hidden deep within, became symbols of a life that had known both immense suffering and the boundless capacity to love. And the dog, once a fragile, injured stray, had grown into a steadfast guardian whose loyalty knew no bounds, a true friend who had helped heal a broken spirit and inspire a community. As the seasons continued their endless cycle, the small apartment above the community center remained a place of refuge and hope, a sanctuary where Thomas, his beloved dog, and countless others found solace. Their lives, once marred by isolation and despair, had been transformed into a testament to the enduring strength of compassion and the unyielding human spirit. In every shared meal, every smile exchanged on cold winter mornings, and every whispered promise of a brighter tomorrow, the story of Thomas and his loyal companion was etched into the fabric of the city, a legacy that would endure as long as there were hearts willing to listen and souls brave enough to believe that even in the harshest conditions, love could light the way. And so, in the quiet peace of a gentle evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city exhaled a collective sigh of contentment, Thomas and his dog stood together on a snowy street, looking forward to a future filled with promise. In that shared moment of reflection and hope, they embodied the truth that every end carries the seeds of a new beginning, and that even the deepest wounds can eventually be healed by the simple, transformative power of kindness.